So I've got several hats on. One is a very institutional hat. It's the other, though, has been around for about 6 years working in the innovation space, and I came into this almost inadvertently as I was funded by the government at the time, the UK government, to look at challenges in financial services. And it was very much a non-profit vocational pastime. But we were asked to look at some of the key challenges and find solutions. And one of the solution providers that we started to get involved with was academics. Academics are very interesting in this space. But the other was the burgeoning interest in fintech. People who'd come from outside the sector, digital entrepreneurs who were solving problems that were very, very personal to themselves and thinking differently about those problems. And as the years moved on, fintech itself actually became one of the problems. So it moved from being a solution provider to being a challenge. How do you manage, how do you develop, how do you get it to focus on the right things? So the banking industry has been adopting this framework of working with innovation now for some time. About 3-4 years ago, I know Barclays was here yesterday. They've obviously got their escalator and incubator space set up in London. Other banks have all followed suit. They have captive investment funds. They look at fintech predominantly from the point of view of how does it support their own supply chains and value chains. And then there's all of the innovative and what I describe as really sexy stuff that's going on, places which will have a significant macroeconomic impact if they do get into the mainstream financial services space, things that the government and the UK government worries about. So it came as a great relief to me last autumn when I was asked to be involved with what was a government-sponsored report on fintech. It was called Fintech Futures. And when the government is confused about something, or when they have been over-lobbied, or where they are feeling that they don't fully understand both the risks and opportunities of a particular issue, they involve scientists routinely at a very senior level through a process called a Blackett review or a Foresight review that's carried out by the Government Office for Science. And this particular review was commissioned by the Cabinet Office. George Osborne personally asked for Go Science to look at fintech and figure out what some of the wider implications of it are. Now, interestingly, having written and published this review, it came out in March. It's called Fintech Futures. It's on the Government Office for Science website. And there are 6, 7, 8, 9 recommendations that are pertinent to this group here. Having carried this out, they're now doing a similar process just for blockchain, which I think is probably one of the most disruptive things that could go on. So where are we in the asset management world? Well, it's interesting to note that I think the asset management world currently is at the bottom of the steep learning curve that the banks were at 3 years ago. I think we're about 3 years behind, trying to figure out what are the models, how can we use these smart people who've come from somewhere else with a completely different context. They maybe have got no experience in financial services, but they're learning very fast, and they absolutely want to disrupt this space. So where can the asset management world go? What can it bring? I mean, there is a question in my mind as to whether or not the industry will continue in the current form. I don't think it will. And if it wants to survive, it needs to work with as opposed to against these innovators. One of probably the most interesting issues, I think, that is closest and easy, and with which it is most easy to engage for this sector, will be crowdfunding. So I'm chairing a panel at the moment, or in a few moments' time, on exactly this. But crowdfunding in its current model has all kinds of risks associated with it. I wrote about these in the journal for FundForum, and you can read them there. I'm not going to go into them now. What's interesting to me, though, is all of these risks can be mitigated by the institutional world, the asset managers here getting involved. So to me, it's quite pertinent that this discussion is going on here, because all the things that I and probably a number of other people in this space think of as challenging for the consumer can in fact be mitigated by the constituents that we have at this FundForum conference.